Welcome back into the Daily Dose. I'm Jeff Hansen. The show is brought to you by Give'emHellBrigham.com and by CougarSportsInsider.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. Appreciate you guys coming back each and every day. You all are the best. The audience is growing. The platform is growing. Your support is awesome. It means the world to me. If you haven't subscribed, please do. And just thank you. Thank you for coming back each and every day. Could not do this without you guys and your algorithm fuel. So thank you very much. And yes, important update. I shaved. Didn't know that this was going to be like a big thing, but hey, enough people reached out to me yesterday that said, Jeff, when you shave, you need to give us a warning because that was startling. I just, I get bored. I like to show off my jowls here and there. So yeah, I shaved, okay? And I shaved the mustache so that everybody could stop being so creeped out. Here we are today. Feel like I got to update everybody now because there was a conversation about it. Like I'm some sort of a fashion icon, a facial hair icon. I don't know. Thank you guys for coming back each and every day and supporting us here at the Daily Dose. Today, let's talk about Kedon Slovis, and really let's talk about the BYU passing game at large. There's a lot that we could talk about in terms of opportunities about BYU passing against this Kansas defense, but I really want to hone in and look kind of at the past, look at the past 3 weeks and look at the past few years to see what we're seeing from Kedon Slovis that maybe we're not used to seeing in BYU and we're not used to seeing under an Aaron Roderick-led offense. And in order to help us out, I've got some stats. So I want to share my screen here with you guys, and I want to pull up some stats from my friends over at Sports Info Solutions. I've got Kedon Slovis highlighted in gray, and you can see every quarterback who's thrown meaningful snaps, and I threw Joe Critchlow in there. Maybe that wasn't meaningful, but my mark was about 10 throws. So that kind of excludes Soljay Mayava. It excludes Jacob Conover. That's pretty well it. But every other quarterback since 2019, here we are. Here's what their stats were. And I want to highlight a few things. So you can see, let's talk about accuracy just right now. Okay, real quick about accuracy, because this number is going to be one that everybody easily understands, and it kind of jumps off of this page. His catchable percentage. What's the difference between catchable and on target? Catchable is balls that, hey, a wide receiver can go up and make a play. On target is a ball where it's thrown exactly where it's supposed to be. 74.4% catchable percentage isn't bad. I mean, it's not too far off of Jaren Hall over the last couple of years, 77.9, 77.3. It is a ways off from, Zach Wilson's crazy 2020 season, but it's, clearly different competition, things like that. It's not bad. It's maybe not right where BYU would like Kedon Slovis to be, but it's not bad. 74.4% okay. On target, right there at the same kind of ballpark, same explanation. You'd like it to be a little bit higher, but you're not going to complain about nearly 69% of your throws being on target. But here's the number that has me concerned: the air yards and the air yard percentage. So what is an air yard? Let's break this down and let's think about it. In its simplest form, an air yard is just, the number of yards from the line of scrimmage to where a receiver catches the ball. So if Chase Roberts runs a 10-yard out and it's thrown right at the sticks and he immediately catches it and goes out of bounds and gains 10 yards, that's 10 yards through the air. Kedon Slovis had to do the work to move that ball down the field. Now, where do the non-air yards come in? It's after the catch, right? So Chase Roberts takes that 10-yard out, and he's able to find some space, breaks a tackle, and he gains another 10 yards after that. So it's now a 20-yard play. Well, 10 of those 20 yards were through the air, and the remaining 10 were after the catch. So Kedon Slovis gets credit for 10 air yards. Why does this matter, right? Why do we look at this number? And it's kind of a funny balance. You don't want your quarterback to be doing all the work, right? Ideally, you're getting your playmakers the ball in space so they can go out and they can make some plays. However, you don't want to make it so that your passing game is not, especially in this Aaron Roderick offense, you don't want to be so cautious in your pass game that you're only throwing the ball 6, 7, 8 yards downfield and then hoping that your wide receivers go out and make a play, make a man miss. Kedon Slovis, we're kind of on the wrong side of the balance. It's not totally imbalanced, but it's maybe weighted a little bit too cautious. You can see where BYU has been: 59.2 in 2020, 52 in 22, 61 in 21. So you can see that BYU likes to push the ball down the field. They like to throw the ball in the air more than they like to throw underneath routes and let receivers go and hopefully break tackles. But Kedon Slovis this year, this number kind of jumps out at you when you look at this. only 47.4% of his yards are coming via air yards right now, meaning he is getting the ball to his receivers, and then they're having to go out, break tackles, and make plays. That's kind of intimidating for me. That's a little bit scary for me going into Big 12 play, because the BYU wide receivers, there isn't a Puka Nacua, at least not yet. I haven't seen anybody who can consistently go out and break tackles. I haven't seen even a Neil Pau'u who can go out and physically overpower would-be tacklers. I haven't seen that from the wide receiver position yet. Maybe it's there. Maybe Keanu Hill gets more involved. Maybe Keelan Marion is that guy that's shifty enough to make to break tackles and get around guys. Maybe Cody Epps getting healthy. Maybe that changes things too. But right now, I just haven't seen it consistently enough that I would feel comfortable with Kedon Slovis not pushing the ball down the field. That just is not what Aaron Roderick likes to do. I want to share one more screen with more stats, and it's kind of the same stuff, but it's looked at a little bit differently. And it kind of tells the story that I'm trying to illustrate here. Right here at yards per attempt, I've got this highlighted, 7.3. Look at where BYU has been over the course of Aaron Roderick's offensive coordinator career in Provo. 11, 9.8, 8.8, 8.4, 8.8, 9.1. This 7.3, that really jumps off the page. That's staggering. Aaron Roderick even went on record as recently as a couple of weeks ago saying yards per attempt, not yards per completion, but yards per attempt, he really likes to be closer to 10. Definitely north of 9, but closer to 10 yards per attempt, because that means that he can look at that number really quickly and see that we are pushing the ball down the field. That, hey, every pass play we call, we're pushing the ball down the field. We're trying to get chunk plays. But right now, BYU's not doing that. It's 7.3 yards per attempt. This is a pretty cautious approach. And then we jump over here, different number, but the same story, the average throw depth. Look at where BYU has been over the course of the last several years. 10.5, 10, 11.5, near 10, 9.6, 9.5, 10.6. Down here at 8.9, less than 9 yards, the average throw depth. Kedon Slovis, this tells me that Kedon Slovis, I don't know what the answer is, but it tells me that Kedon Slovis is either not seeing wide receivers open downfield, so he's playing a little bit cautious. It's telling me that maybe wide receivers aren't getting open downfield, period, because they're just not getting open. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. Or that maybe the defense is playing the pass so well because there's no rushing attack that there's just not anybody getting open. It's probably the real answer. It's probably a culmination of all of those things, but we're seeing a pretty vanilla passing game by BYU standards. And I think ultimately that's what's hurting Kedon Slovis from a statistical standpoint. And I think BYU's got to get that fixed. I don't think they can continue to win by putting up about 200 yards of passing a game. That's just not a recipe that we've seen have a ton of success in Provo throughout the history of BYU football. BYU throws the ball, so we've got to see how this comes together. I do think the wide receivers, we're talking about Kedon Slovis, but I do think the wide receivers, they've got to play better. Yeah, we've seen the drops, and those things happen. You'd like to have zero, but that's not what I'm talking about. The drops, they'll fix themselves, or they'll be what they are. And it's, a play or two a game. Fix the drops, whatever. These wide receivers are not getting open, especially against Arkansas. There was a defender in the hip pocket of BYU's wide receivers all night long. I mean, that's why you had to have Chase Roberts make these crazy catches in the end zone. Kedon Slovis, he put that ball the only place that it could be because there was just their guys are not getting open. Fesi Sitake talked about this with the media yesterday, and he conceded and said, hey, look, from a wide receiver standpoint, we got beat by Arkansas. We could not get open. We could not create separation. And if we did create separation, we could not maintain that separation. Arkansas's cornerbacks, they played really physically. They were big, and the defensive line was big and physical. So it was, Slovis in the passing game had to move quickly, but they were really long as well. They had great length in the secondary. And as a result, if the wide receivers did create a little bit of space out of their break, the Arkansas secondary was able to make up that difference, make up that ground really, really quickly. That's just not going to work over the course of the next 9 games in Big 12 play. BYU's wide receivers have to get open. Slovis can throw with a little bit more anticipation. He can take a little bit more risk, but these wide receivers have got to get open. And then the last thing is really kind of the play calling. I'm not in the room, so I don't know what plays have been called. The BYU running game has not done any sort of play calls, any favors right now because it just has not been going. So yeah, I mean, if you're a defensive coordinator playing BYU right now, you're putting a 4-man front, and yeah, that's probably going to stop the running game. So you can play a lot of coverage. But from a play calling perspective, I would like to see Aaron Roderick try to open things up a little bit more against Kansas. Maybe that won't work and he'll have to revert back. I'm like, okay, if that's the case, so be it. But I'd like to see BYU take some shots really early on. And maybe Kedon Slovis throws an interception on a deep ball. You know, if it happens, it happens. How many times did that happen with Jaren Hall and Zach Wilson? If it happens, it happens. You don't like it, but at least you're trying to be aggressive. Now, on the flip side of this, we've kind of talked about this, and it's been maybe a little bit of a negative tone. We know Aaron Roderick wants to push the ball downfield. So from that perspective, there's still a lot left in this playbook that we have not seen yet. That should be encouraging. If the running game can get going at all, I mean, at all, it doesn't have to be a 250 yard per game rushing attack. But if BYU can get to just like 4 yards per carry to the point that it's an acceptable running attack that somebody has to respect, if they can get to that consistently, then Aaron Roderick has a whole bag of deep balls, a whole bag of tricks that he can go into that we've seen at BYU over the last 4 or 5 years that maybe we'll see over the course of the next 9 weeks in Big 12 conference play. All in all, I think Kedon Slovis has played well. He hasn't played great, but he's played well. The wide receivers haven't played great, but they played okay. They've got to do a better job. Hopefully Cody Epps comes back and that helps. Wide receivers have got to get open. And the play calling, I think the play calling, look, BYU's 3-0, so you can't complain too much. I'd like to see the play calling do a little, I guess, a few more favors to the BYU passing game this week against Kansas. I think the opportunity is going to be there. The Kansas secondary, they're not as physical. They're not as big. They are long. They have that length that BYU struggled with so much against Arkansas, but it is a different secondary. The holes should be there. The opportunities to attack that secondary should be there much more than they were against Arkansas and even against Sam Houston. So I'd like to see BYU test that and challenge that early in the game on Saturday. And if they find some success, then, hey, maybe you get Kedon Slovis cooking and we can finally see a confident, comfortable Kedon Slovis slinging the ball all down the field, not this cautious Kedon Slovis that's only throwing the ball at 7 yards per attempt and making his wide receivers go out and do all of the work after the catch. Appreciate you guys tuning in to the Daily Dose. Until next time, give them hell.